Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Exec Scrutiny Board on the 9th of February 2026. Welcome to you all. We've got a full house again because of the agenda. I think I'd like to, well, actually, we'll take apologies first. Don't think there are any. Okay. Any late items? Not aware of any. Any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay. Can I just say welcome to everybody again. We have the leadership and cabinet here, welcome. And if we could just do what we did last time when we had the full house, if we can go from the back, from Councillor Eyre across, and then if the cabinet and leadership can also introduce themselves, that will save introductions during the various contributions to debate. So over to you, Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Councillor Matthew Eyre. I'm a councillor for Oakwood Ward.
Councillor Lindsay, Alveston South.
Yeah, John Wright, Chaddiston East.
I'm Lucy Kerr. I represent Little Over.
Good evening. Councillor Martin Rawson, Chaddiston West.
Sakib Amin, Councillor for Blakery's Ward.
Good evening. Councillor Sue Bonser, Abbey Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Cecile Wright, Albury-Reacham Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Sarah Bolton, Blakery's Ward.
And again, for the leadership executive, we can go from the back left along, please.
Good evening, Cathy Kozlowski, councillor for Chaddiston West.
Oh, just miss Councillor Martin, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hello, Councillor Alison Martin, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Care, Darley Ward Councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Sarah Chambers, Councillor for St Finn and Osmiston Ward and Cabinet Member for Communities, Equalities and Public Safety.
Councillor Nadine Peafield, St Finn and Osmiston Ward, Leader of Derby City Council and portfolio of city centre, regeneration, policy and other things.
Good evening, Councillor Ndukwe Onoha, Councillor for Markworth in New Zealand, Cabinet Member for Street Pride, Parks and Leisure.
Good evening, Chair. Hardy Dinza, Councillor for Blakery's Ward and Cabinet Member for Digital and Organisational Transformation.
Good evening, Councillor Shiraz Khan, Albury-Reacham Ward, Cabinet Member for Housing, Strategic Planning and Regulatory Committees.
Thank you to everybody. Okay, right, moving on then. Minutes of the meetings held January 5th, January 12th. Are there any notes, any comments on that, or are we okay to agree those? Yep. Okay. Standing items, number 5 is forward plan. It does offer us an opportunity to request, it's not a demand, it's a request for the relevant cabinet member to come and join us on any particular forward plan item. And I do actually have one request, and I'd be open to any others. I think that I would like information, or sorry, the cabinet member to join us at the relevant point when, which is it? It's Darley Abbey Mills. Sorry, apologies, I can't find it here. There's an item 19 / whichever one it is. I can't find it now. Somewhere. Completely lost it now. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Page 12. I'd like to offer an invite to, I think, Councillor Swan to join us. I know it will be going through the relevant overview and scrutiny, but I think there's quite a lot of capital potential investment required for that. So I think it probably just needs a little bit of a closer look. If Councillor Swan could be invited alongside the officers when that's relevant for us to have a look at it as it heads towards Cabinet, that would be appreciated. Okay. And then we have the overview and scrutiny forward plan as well. Now, I think I mentioned last time that it's probably a bit late in the day now to sort of request topics or go to their various ONS. I think they're very busy trying to wrap up things towards the municipal end of year. So I think we should allow them to continue that work and maybe pick this up, whoever's the chair in exec scrutiny and the board are in the new municipal year, unless there's any other suggestions to. Yep. Okay, thank you. Council Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations, they're attached. You can see how Cabinet resolved to note, agree or disagree with our recommendations, as always. And item 8 moves on to the hefty Council Cabinet agenda. So we go to item 8, which is minute extract 2825 of Communities Public Protection Housing Scrutiny Review Board 19th of January 2026. Now, are there any comments or notes on that? Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. So I chair the Communities Board, and at the most recent meeting we had a presentation from the Parks and Open Spaces team. I'd like to thank the Parks and Open Spaces team not only for that presentation but for all the work that they do all year round. So the Board passed unanimously the following recommendation, which is that we recommend that the Cabinet seek to use any non-ring-fence funding available as part of the 26-27 budget and all other available funding streams to provide appropriate and sufficient financial provisions to install mains lighting at all locations where solar lighting has been removed, including Oakwood Park, and to seek to install additional lighting and CCTV in parks across Derby which would benefit from these, including Chellaston Park. So that was based on the presentation that we had that looked at the removal of solar lights over the last year or so, and the seek really from residents and from councillors to see those reinstated. I'd be grateful to any members of the Cabinet or any officers to confirm whether that is featured in the budget going forward, whether now or at the appropriate time during this meeting. Thank you.
As always, I'll take any contributions from officers or Cabinet members at any time. That can obviously seemingly be dealt with in due course then, Councillor Eyre. Are there any other comments on that? Okay. Okay. So, oh, sorry, Councillor Kerr, I didn't see you there.
So, thank you. It's really just to highlight the paragraph included in the minute here about the value of Friends of Parks groups and the comments back that's recorded back there from the Parks officers team who clearly valued that input, and I just wanted to say that I think that's a really important paragraph, if you like, in reflecting the way things work in Derby. So I was just saying thank you to everybody concerned.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to key decisions then, item 9. So adult social care fees and charges, 26-27. Not quite. Oh, come out.
Thank you, Chair. Gomel is a Director for Commissioning. So, Chair, this report sets out the Council's responsibilities under the Care Act 2014. We have a duty to ensure that there is sustainable and affordable adult social care market locally. This includes establishing fee levels that providers will expect to receive for commissioned care that is delivered to meet an individual's assessed needs. Engagement and with the market has taken place, and some of those findings are outlined within the report. And Chair, the report sets out the Council's rates for 26-27 for standard residential nursing care, for care homes, standard home care rates, supported living, extra care and day opportunities. The report rates, detail in the report, take into account rises in the cost of care for the local market. For those individuals with more complex needs, specialist fee rates are also outlined within the report. Separate discussions will take place with health colleagues and health services around joint care packages. The report also sets out proposed charges for council-provided adult social care services for 26-27, which forms part of the Council's adult social care charging policy. So, Chair, the recommendations of the fee rates are outlined within the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr?
Thank you. There are anecdotal comments about the increased difficulty in recruiting people into the sort of caring roles which are really important in terms of providing this provision, whether we're talking about provision from the council or from the private sector. And I wondered how much the inflationary levels here have reflected that has that been a driver for that? If people are having to use more agency staff within settings rather than be able to employ their own staff, which they may not be able to do, or they may have a larger level of vacancies. Has that been a factor in the inflation here?
Gamal?
Yeah, Chair. Well, to say the national living wage increases have been factored in together with cost increases for care providers, such as the ones that Councillor Kerr has outlined. So that forms in part of the overall calculation, but also, Chair, for information, the uplift proposed by the Council is broadly a percentage point above national living wage. So, in short, yes, those kind of agency costs or other cost pressures for businesses have been factored in relation to those percentages.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to just to follow on from Gamal's response, Councillor Kerr, thank you for your question. It's a really important one, and one that I'm quite concerned about as well, about fair pay and recruitment in the adult social care sector. We've given this increase at the moment. I have had meetings with the providers, and I do talk to them through the Derby Care Association, the collective body of providers that's been created in the last 2 years. And I know they are concerned because we do have relatively low rates. We pay relatively low rates anyway in Derby. And I am very mindful of their concerns. And so I think this is, at the moment, a fair increase. I think in terms of the broader situation, I think the government's created these fair pay commissions, I think if that's the title as I remember it, and the first one is to look at employment in care. So I think there'll be more recommendations coming from that Councillor Care, which may end up providing for special increases for wages in care, which would be welcome. And I think the other point to bear in mind is that Derbyshire currently pay much higher rates for care, standard rates, than we do, although their increase this year has been far less. So there's a discrepancy. So come LGR, there'll have to be some alignment of the fees paid to providers, which obviously affects their ability to recruit and pay the staff. So I think, while I think this is a fair position for now, but we are looking forward to that alignment between city and county, and also awaiting the government's report. And hopefully from there, as a society, we'll be in a better position to secure more employment and good employees in the care sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rawson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we check or that we can make sure as part of the contract that a substantial amount of the uplift does go, does find its way to the care workers who are amongst some of the lowest paid groups in the country. And do we do checks to make sure that that is fed through into salary levels and it's not sort of absorbed by some of the agencies? It does get to the front line.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We do tend to do that as part of our discussions with the market and market engagement, as Councillor Martin was outlining with the Derby Care Association with us. Of course, we passport funding on for national living wage, of course, but we will continue those discussions with the market and work closely with the market to make sure the inflation increases are passed on appropriately. But we'll continue that dialogue that we have with the market to make sure recruitment can continue, and therefore it is important for providers to be paying the correct wages in order to recruit staff.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions, queries, contributions? Okay, thank you very much. No recommendations for that, noted. Okay, moving on then. Item 10, determine school admission arrangements for Derby City maintain a voluntary controlled schools 27 to 28. Mail again.
Great. Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, this report outlines the determination of the school's admissions policy for 27-28 academic year for the Council's responsibility for its community and voluntary controlled schools. Full public consultation has taken place as required with the admissions code, as outlined in the admissions code. No objections, comments were received during the consultation period. The policies are fair, transparent and fully compliant with the admissions code legislation and provide clarity for families and schools for the 27-28 admissions cycle. Approval of the recommendation will ensure the Council meets all its statutory timescales and enables the determined policies to be formally published and implemented for the 27-28 academic year. The recommendations are outlined in the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just a technical one, and if I'm being thick, then I will be again. It's 27 to 28, so this is an annual thing, and does it have to be? Is that the mechanism that we have to follow?
Yes, Chair, that's right. We're legally required, I think it's a date of 28th of February for all councils to have published so that parents, as the application process starts the previous year, their parents are aware of what the admissions criteria is. So it has to start now in accordance with the admissions code.
Thank you. And does it tend to change from year to year significantly, or is it pretty much a general thing that's slightly tweaked or amended or even stays the same?
Yes, Chair, good question. It's slightly tweaked, only in terms of individual school admission numbers that might need aligning to current numbers, but it's it is absolutely in line with the admissions code, particularly in relation to criteria, which is determined. So tends to be very few changes because it has to be, all accounts are required to be compliant with criteria in relation to admissions criteria outlined in the code.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
I was wondering, Chair, how this works alongside the maps which are available online to show the normal areas for different schools. In that I'm quite regularly, I wouldn't say frequently, but regularly, once a year when the applications come in, I'm contacted about some anomalies, and I expect most members have occasional contacts about streets that appear to be in the wrong area for a particular parent's view as to where their child should be going. But the opportunity that potentially will come with local government reorganisation to review some of the cross-boundary issues, I just wondered, given the long run-in for a document like this, whether it's something which we should be planning towards doing, potentially in the interim year, before the new local authorities take over.
Thank you. I mean, we tend to, when we deal with a plan or a report that spans several years, then we're always talking about the changes to local government, aren't we? Because obviously it's getting closer. Because this is a year on year, at what point would you perceive the convergence really with LGR as what we expect it to be, to sort of have an influence on this, and what changes do you think that might bring? I know it's a crystal ball question, but it's worth asking.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one to answer, absolutely, but to clarify, the determination of the admissions policy is more to do with existing normal areas and the governance and the criteria in relation to that. In relation to LGR, those sorts of discussions could start kind of as that journey starts to happen, but it is a complex process in relation to when your legal responsibilities start and when is it actually sensible to be making some changes to those areas, and what's the rationale and the due diligence done behind it, because there can be unintended consequences to that. So a lot of work would need to be done in relation to any changes to normal area. For all intents and purposes at LGR, it will be like for like, and then over a period of time, looking at whether normal areas or issues that are emerging, there's a rationale for them that need to be reviewed.
And of course, there'll be a transition period as well. It won't all happen overnight. I would imagine many of these sort of service areas are going to need time to merge, to be reconsidered. So it's not going to be a big bang, I would expect, on day one of the new authority, so to speak. It's one of those. Councillor Kerr, has that sort of answered your question in a roundabout way?
A roundabout way, yes, Chair.
Okay. Are there any more comments, contributions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. No recommendations for that's noted. Okay, moving on then to item 11, which is Riverside Chambers, relocation of Derby Coroner's officers and courts, and update on future use. Okay, over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks to update Cabinet on progress in respect of Riverside Chambers, seeking approval for the relocation of Derby Coroner's courts and officers from St Catherine's House to Riverside Chambers, approval for the funding of the works necessary to accommodate the move, and asking Cabinet to note the repurposing of Riverside Chambers as a more public-facing building. The Coroner's Service for Derby and Derbyshire is a statutory function delivered jointly by the County and City Councils, currently operating from St Catherine's House in Derby, but that building is no longer fit for purpose, being too small, poorly laid out, and without the facilities to support respectful and efficient operation of a coroner's court. With the lease ending in July 2026, we now have an important opportunity to relocate the service to improved accommodation. In 2024, Avison Young, the Council's strategic property advisors, reviewed the Connect Derby portfolio and recommended consolidating operations into the strongest performing buildings and exploring alternative uses for others. The Council's Asset Rationalisation Programme Board agreed with these conclusions and developed a future plan for each property, including transitioning Riverside Chambers into a public sector focused building. At the end of October 2025, registration services relocated from Royal Oak House into Riverside Chambers. This move has been extremely successful and now offers a much improved customer experience and fit for purpose accommodation for colleagues. There remains significant space available in Riverside Chambers. Given the issues at St Catherine's House, the board has identified it as a strong option for relocating the Coroner's Office and courts. A joint project team working with Derbyshire County Council and the Senior Coroner has since developed and agreed a full specification for the new facilities. The design includes 2 modern courtrooms, increased waiting areas and toilet facilities, improved office layouts, updated digital infrastructure, new heating and ventilation systems, and upgraded audio-visual equipment. Works are planned for completion in Q3 of this year. To enable the move, the local studies library space within Riverside Chambers will be reconfigured. The changes will create purpose-designed rooms, improve circulation and signage, and raise the library's profile in the city. The works to relocate the Coroner's Court and officers will be funded through the Property Capital Programme, and the cost of the works is £400,000. The charges associated with the Coroner's Service are apportioned between Derbyshire County Council 60% and Derby City Council 40%. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. If I may, I've got a couple, just practical ones, as always. In terms of financial and value for money, so we've got 7.1, it talks about Derbyshire County Council 60%, Derby City Council 40%. Apologies if this is in the report somewhere that I haven't seen. How long is that arrangement for? Is there a period of review for that one? And I do have a second question, but it's just interesting to know what that entails for how long.
It's a funding split that's been in existence for a number of years and is intended to continue going into the future. It takes account of the number of deaths across the total county and where those deaths tend to fall. And so on the basis of, and the complexity of those deaths, and obviously given the location of the Royal Derby in Derby City's current boundaries, that therefore means that rather than this sort of normal default split with county and city, which tends to be about 25%, 75%, it's a slightly higher split for Coroner's Court at 40-60.
Thank you. Well explained. And then just a final question on 7.3, which is the capital implication. So we talk about a £400,000 capital investment. Again, I always ask these kind of questions. How sure are we that that's the limit? Is the contingency? What is the process in terms of ensuring that we don't go above that and overspend? How confident are we on that number, really?
We've done a lot of work working with our contractor who also delivered the registration services move, so it's very familiar with the building. We have interrogated their costs and actually brought them down, but have a sensible and suitable contingency and risk pot within the overall cost scheme for the project. So on the basis of the contractor's experience of the building and that sensible contingency, we're comfortable that this is a sensible budget for the project.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Kerr first and then Councillor Bonser.
This is just a point of organisation, I guess, in that it says that the current lease ends in July 26, but the completion of the works is going to be Q3. Now, is that the very beginning of Q3, in which case it will work, or have we got a gap and we're going to have to negotiate an extra month or two at the current location? I do support the move. I've been to a coroner's court that was held in the current location. It doesn't have a good public-facing feel to it.
Yes, the programme is intended to finish in time for ahead of the expiry of the lease at St Catherine's House. We do, however, have a contingency plan in place to allow us to remain in the building a little bit longer if necessary. That's already been discussed with the landlord, who is amenable to that. But the current programme does have us delivering and moving in time for that July 2026 date.
Councillor Bonser, I forgot you then.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I do aim to rectify this, but I haven't actually visited Riverside Chambers as yet. And I'm just wondering whether there's any, from a service user's perspective, whether there's any conflicts or sensitivities that you've had to think about in terms of locating those services. You know, you could have one group of people in there registering the birth of their baby, and a coroner's court potentially occurring at the same time. Have thoughts been given to those, from a sensitivity point of view? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonser. Yes, we have. So, talking first in terms of registration services, registration services occupy the ground floor. That's a large improvement from Royal Oak House, which was on multiple floors and was really inaccessible for users, particularly those with pushchairs or prams. So registration services now has a much more accessible area. It is a separate space in the sense you go through those doors and then the waiting areas are all on the other side of doors into that space. Coroner's Court will be on the first floor, so people come in and go directly upstairs. We spent a lot of time working with the senior coroner to take into account sensitivities around how that space is laid out. As Councillor Kerr has mentioned, the facilities at St Catherine's House are really suboptimal. It has a very small waiting area where all parties to the inquest have to sit together, which is obviously extremely uncomfortable in many circumstances. So this allows us to have separate waiting spaces, which are much more sympathetic to the users of that facility. So yes, we also have some contingency arrangements for people to leave by different, more private exits if required in the context of an inquest.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this paper is an excellent move, and when I had to attend the inquest of my own mother's death, we had to go to St Catherine's House, and it wasn't the most appropriate building at all. As you can imagine, as Councillor Bonser has already said, there are sensitivities, people obviously in a state of distress, and from my own personal memories of that building, it wasn't suitable at all. And I did feel for other people who were there for similar things on the week we were there. And I'm really pleased that this report is going to address the present difficulties that people experience when they have been attending St Catherine's House, and I very much support this new location.
Thank you. Councillor Rawson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, it was obviously, that building was a former magistrates' court, and I think the the local studies library was actually based in the former courtroom. So I guess it's the reconfiguration is going to be you returning that space to its original purpose in a sense. So just to ask, is it that space that was formerly the local studies library that's going to be utilised? And secondly, I guess there'll also be a saving from no longer paying the lease on St Catherine's House. So I guess that will offset going forward some of the investment that's been put into it. But also just to echo other people's comments really about how good I think the overall project is in terms of use of that building going forward. I think it's been thought out really well.
Thank you. If there are no other contributions, I'd like to propose that the board welcomes the relocation to provide an enhanced service. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Yeah, I echo all of the comments there and look forward to this being put into place, far more appropriate. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, item 12, Pride in Place funding.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Sarah Edmondson, the Service Manager for the Neighbourhood Service. This report asks Cabinet to approve Derby City Council's participation in the Government's Pride in Place initiative, which includes a short-term impact fund and a separate long-term community-led regeneration programme. The first funding stream is the Pride in Place Impact Fund, to which we've been allocated 1.5 million of capital funding running from September of 25 to March 2027. This fund is designed to deliver quick, high-impact improvements to places that matter to local people. Given the delivery timescales and the eligibility criteria, the proposed focus is on the initial delivery of Derby's public realm strategy, which is nearing its completion and is being shaped by public engagement. This allows the Council to move at pace and deliver visible improvements to public spaces that support safety, accessibility, footfall and civic pride in the city centre. Second, the Pride in Place programme is a long-term investment of up to £20 million over 10 years, awarded to Chaddesden West. The funding is split between revenue and capital and is intended to support lasting change. The programme is explicitly community-led. A local Pride in Place board will be established, chaired independently and including the local MP, at least one ward councillor and community representatives. The board will work in partnership with the council to develop an investment plan which will cover the initial 3 to 4 years that reflects local priorities and delivers the programme's core objectives, which are building stronger communities, creating thriving places and empowering people to shape their future. Derby City Council will act as the accountable body for both funds, taking initial responsibility for governance, financial management and ensuring that public money is used appropriately and in line with grant conditions. Costs of programme management and delivery are funded from the grants and no match funding is required. This report seeks approval to accept the 1.5 million Pride in Place Impact Fund allocation, enabling delivery of short-term high-impact capital improvements within the agreed timescales. Delegate authority to accept up to £20 million of Pride in Place programme funding for Chaddesden West, subject to satisfactory grant conditions. This authority would sit with the Strategic Director of Place in consultation with the Section 151 officer and Cabinet Member for Communities, Equalities and Public Safety and would support investment over a 10-year period. It would confirm the Council as the accountable body for both the Impact Fund and the long-term programme with responsibility for governance, financial oversight and compliance with grant conditions. Delegate authority to the Section 151 officer to make necessary amendments to the Council's capital programme to enable delivery of schemes funded through Pride in Place programme and the Impact Fund. And finally, delegate authority to the Strategic Director of Place in consultation with the Section 151 officer and relevant Cabinet members to submit investment plans to government, establish required governance arrangements, deploy funding and enter into any associated funding or delivery agreements needed to implement the programme. Happy to answer any questions from members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, hand was straight up. Off you go.
Thank you very much. I'm concerned a little bit about paragraph 4.10. I can understand an independent chair because past experience of these grants tend to identify that long-term benefits that they're designed to generate don't always accrue. I've got concern, though, that the chair, because it's a very long-term project and we're getting the approval of the local MP and over a longer period, you know, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. There may be a change of oversight. So that's an issue. Is that, you know, that appointment of a chair, is it for a specified period, or when there's a change of government or a change of council, is it looked into? I'm also concerned that this at least one ward council, it seems a bit of a second thought that we're going to have ward councillors. Why can't, I mean, it covers one ward, doesn't it? And in future, there's probably only going to be 2 councillors for that ward. Why can't we say, because I actually think the ward councillors should be playing a major role in this and are going to provide that continuity, potentially, why can't we have all the ward councillors on it? So it appears that very short paragraph appears to be a bit of an afterthought in terms of, whereas I think the governance of these things are absolutely should be probably beyond the funding, the second priority. So unless it's actually prescribed in the guidance, I would recommend those changes, that the chair is for a specified period, so it can go across potential changes in leadership of the council, but also, you know, I've got an issue, unless it's again prescribed by the guidance, that the MP has to provide that. You know, this is for the local. This is for a local ward within the city. Why shouldn't it be the cabinet that decides who that chair is, and with the MP as an interested party but no voting rights?
Oh, sorry, cabinet member.
The chair is independent, whoever the MP is. Whichever party, whatever political changes there are, the chair isn't connected to that one person, it's the MP, whoever it may be.
Yeah, I get that, but it's been pointed by the council and the MP, which is you know, there's an issue there in terms of transparency, but also the issue around Councillor Kozlowski around the council as being, you know, this should be an important issue for you, I would have thought.
Yes, I believe it's not compelling because there are only 2 councillors, as it happens in that area at the moment. It's not compelling us to attend. It's up to 2. I'm sure we'll both be very keen to attend.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to recommend that as part of the constitutions group, the local ward councillors are part of it. You know, whether they can attend or not is a different matter, but as part, actually be on the oversight board, I think it's called, isn't it?
I mean, as a board member, it's within your gift to present a recommendation. So if you want to just draw one up while we have the extra debate, and then put it forward, get a seconder, and we'll have a vote on it. If you want to get that sorted. Councillor Bolton, and then Councillor Eyre.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I listened to what councillors said, but clearly the councillors could change just like the MP might change. So clearly you have to evolve as things change themselves in the community. So I can't quite see what the issue is. More importantly, it's imperative that the local residents are there and the various groups are on this body so that they make sure that the funding goes to the people and children who need that money spent in the ward. And I think most importantly, what it doesn't say in this report is there going to be a base in the ward? Who's going to scrutinise the spending? Because with issues like this before in wards, we all know there has been issues before on spending, and we need to be careful, you know, how that money is spent and when. But clearly, I think the councillor makes some remarks that the 2 present councillors might not be there in the future either.
Just before I move on, very good point, because we have had large amounts of money back in the day. I remember when my first committee with Councillor Roberts, Deventio, the Viking village, that had severe problems. I'm not saying this will follow that pathway, but you need strong governance. some kind of, I would have thought, link to the neighbourhood board for at least some kind of inclusion in that process. What it can't be is in isolation to just be left alone without proper scrutiny and governance. So that's a good point, Councillor Bolt, which I agree with. Sorry, do we want, before we move on then, if we just get a contribution from the officer, maybe able to clarify a few of those points?
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Councillor Wright, there is consideration to how we implement the chair role so that we have that. The initial investment plan is for 3 to 4 years, so we need to consider how we might be able to have a break in that sort of chair role to reflect that. The way that we intend to recruit the board is through community interview. So the community being involved in the recruitment of the chair and board is vital throughout. And just to respond to your query about councillor board membership, it is at least one councillor. So consideration will be given to that.
Okay, I've got Councillor Eyre, Councillor Martin, Councillor Rawson. So Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. We've talked about how the MP might change and the ward councillors might change, but the ward might change as well. Because if I remember rightly from the LGR discussions, Chaddesden West, as it exists now, is not proposed to continue to exist in that way. It would need to go back up to 3 councillor size and possibly 2 councillor representation. And then we don't know what's going to happen under the rechange of ward boundaries after that, and that would all be within this 10-year period. If there are changes to the ward, and let's say it expands more north but cuts off some of the south of the ward, is it tied to the geographical ward as it exists in that period in time, or is it down to the neighbourhood as it exists now? Because you could put some investment into, let's say, the most southern part of the Chaddesden West ward as it exists now, but that moves into a future Chaddesden East, and actually part of it comes in from north into west, and actually no funding gets spent there at all. How's it all tied together if the ward boundaries change?
I'll just jump in there before you reply. I've made a note, LGR, and I know it keeps coming up, but absolutely valid point, because this is such a long period of time in council terms anyway. If we do see changes, how will that, you know, this is about the review each year, I suppose. If something does change significantly, then we have to obviously then reconsider it. So is there going to be something built into this particular framework to allow for that flexibility?
So the boundary of pride in place for Chaddesden West is a set boundary at this point in time. There is a strict criteria around how we would expand that boundary out, which we have to respond to MHCLG's criteria around that. However, that is something that we have discussed and should be considering. My understanding, and I would like to double check, but my understanding is as well that the funding is for Chaddesden West. However, if something is slightly outside of that boundary, if it has an impact on the residents of Chaddesden West, then it can be considered as part of that funding.
Councillor, okay. Right, Councillor Martin, sorry, thanks for your patience.
No, thank you, Chair. I think the officer has responded to Councillor Wright's point, but just to emphasise, I'm sympathetic to some of the points you're making, but I think that if we look at count point 4.10 again, I think you'll see that it does say that they're led by an independent chair who's just approved by the local MP and the local authority. So that's both bodies in the sense of the office of the local MP. And it does say at least one ward councillor, meaning therefore implying that more than one could be on the board should they so wish. So, I'm sympathetic to where you're coming from, but I think if you read that again, you'll see that it can incorporate what you're asking for. I think the wording. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rawson.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And as one of the Chaddesden West councillors representing this area, obviously it's the funding is very much to be welcomed. An investment into the community to tackle some of those really long-term issues that Chaddesden West faces, health inequalities and poverty and some of those ingrained issues that need tackling over a very long period. So that's the purpose of the funding, and what we'll certainly be setting out to achieve to improve those outcomes. I think, as has been said, the the places on the board are for the roll holder, not for a particular individual. So it would be for the MP, whoever that is, and councillors, whoever they are, and Councillor Kozlowski and myself will certainly are very keen to be involved and look forward to getting involved. And I think we'd both expect to be on the board and playing a full role. So a lot of potential for the community as we work through the process and getting the things set up. Obviously, accountability is important to make sure that things go smoothly, and the council, as the accountable body, will be responsible for that. The independent chair, that person will be giving a sense of continuity, if you like. If as some of us may come and go as councillors or MP and so on, hopefully the independent chair will be able to take that longer term view and be able to take the project forward. So certainly very much to be welcomed from my point of view, and we look forward to getting involved and working with the community and making some really good positive changes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all about solid, positive outcomes at the end of the day. That's the most important thing there. Councillor, oh sorry, before I come to you, Councillor Wright, ask you about whether you want to proceed with your recommendation or not. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about the standing orders or the constitution or similar for the body that's been set up here, but it doesn't appear that there's a specific delegation within the recommendations as to who's going to be responsible for that. You know, there's to deal with the capital programme, it's there to be dealing with the organisation of the funding, to be putting bids in, it's there, but we don't seem to have a recommendation as to who's going to be looking at that. And I think it's, given the comments we've had, I think some sort of delegation of authority or agreement with the relevant cabinet member should be included as a recommendation within that. And following on from the best use of this money, I was reading an article, others may have seen it this morning, about I read it in The Guardian, and it was a comment out from somebody in government, I can't remember who, which was talking about public realm strategy tending to look at high streets, at city centres, and not at the neighbourhood centres and district centres that people are more likely to visit on a daily basis. And clearly there is one, or at least one, in this area. And I haven't checked it out recently, but it, like most in deprived areas, it is likely to have a higher number of fast food outlets, of vape shops and betting shops than the average. And how we revitalise that with the support of this funding, I think, is something that could help generate a more sustainable and uplift the area. So maybe something needs to be done along bearing that particularly in mind.
Okay, thank you. Did you suggest that you wanted to put forward a recommendation? I wasn't quite clear on that one.
I could put something together.
Well, only if you want to.
You
seem to indicate that you may want to do that, but let's park that second, have a think about that if you do. Councillor Wright, if you haven't been reassured by Councillor Martin, do you still want to put forward a recommendation and seek a seconder?
Yeah, but reflecting on the feedback, rather than the recommendation I've submitted, I'd like to alter a form of words of paragraph 4.10 as part of the recommendation. So
suggesting changing of the 4.10?
Yeah. Well, a recommendation that uses 4.10
yeah, we can't change it. Yeah. Okay, so have you got that? Have you sent that through, or have you got it in a sentence?
I mean, I think it's probably easy if I just describe the changes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll try and capture it.
So paragraph 4.10, rather than the board will be led by an independent chair approved by the local MP, the same form of words, approved by the local authority, take out the MP. All relevant ward councillors will also be part of the board and the local MP to represent resident concerns, etc.
So it's not full council, it's not a motion to amend. What I would suggest you do is, if you can put that into words, as a recommendation, actually, yeah, do that. Rather than ask to change that, you need to suggest something
I wasn't asking to change the report.
Okay,
I'm just basically using that form of words to put as a recommendation.
Okay, get that written down, but you may want to listen to Councillor Peafield, the leader.
Thank you, Chair. This has been set by government, so in spite of what... I do understand where you're coming from, Councillor Wright, but it's government that has set the guidelines and the boundaries of what's required. So even with a recommendation, we wouldn't be able to change it.
Okay, Councillor Wright, I'm still happy for you to put something forward, but you need to... you don't have to do it necessarily now. We can return to it if you want just 5 minutes to get that written down, send it through, and then you need a seconder and we'll have a vote on it.
I will do. I take the warning, and obviously if this is setting guidance or legislation, then that's a different matter, but I've not read anywhere in the report to suggest that's the case.
That's fine. Don't let it put you off. If you really want to put that forward, you do. Okay. But the Cabinet are sitting there, and I suggest that it may be something that they understand already. The level of success might be quite low. Anyway, I'll leave you to that, Councillor Wright, if you want to ping that across on email, and then we can return to it at the relevant point. Councillor Kerr, did you have a recommendation now?
I have, Chair, to say that Cabinet ensures that a clear and effective constitution or standing orders is, if necessary, developed by officers and approved by relevant Cabinet members and directors to ensure that good governance of the Chadderton West Pride in Place programme exists.
Okay, are you going to send that through on an email? Do you want to seek a seconder for that, Councillor Kerr? Is anybody going to second it, Councillor Kerr? I know you're not allowed to, Leader. Councillor Eyre will. So if we can have a vote on that, all in favour of that recommendation? Okay, that's 5. All against? No? Okay, we're agreed on that one then. So we'll send that through to Cabinet. If you can capture that via email, that'd be good. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, do we have any more contributions, questions or queries on that item? No. We will...
My question answered.
Oh, Councillor Bolton, can we just recap what it was?
I just wanted to know if there's going to be a base in the actual...
Okay. Is there going to be a base in the ward that this body will be sort of meeting?
There hasn't been plans for a base as yet. The intention is to utilise everything we can from Chadderston West itself. So, for example, the recruitment, we are looking to host that in the ward, and then would look to host as much activity in the ward as we possibly can.
I mean, it would certainly make sense, wouldn't it? It'd be a little bit ludicrous if it wasn't within the ward. Okay, point taken. Okay, thank you. Right, we will return to you, Councillor Wright, when you've got that, if you send it through. Okay, all right, well, this will take 5 minutes. Item 13, Q3 financial monitoring, 25-26. Okay, who's going to take that? Okay, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Q3 financial forecast for the council. So that's to the end of December for both revenue, capital, and it covers the dedicated schools grant, DSG position, and the HRA and the Treasury Management report is also included. So really, really pleasing to be able to say that the Q3 position on the revenue is really positive, and we're reporting a 2.6, just over £2.6 million underspend, and that's a change of over 3 million from the Q2 position where we were reporting a £500,000 overspend, and that was outlined in the report to Cabinet in November. So it's really, really positive on the revenue side. Several factors contributing to that over £3 million movement. I think one of them is setting a really sound budget for this financial year. invested circa £40 million worth of investment into those essential services as part of the budget process last year. And also the demand management strategies that we're delivering through the delivery board are now really starting to pay dividend, and that's also featured in the budget report as well. So some really good work. We still operate a really robust monitoring and mitigating of any potential budget issues throughout the year. So we still have our spending panels, which review expenditure over £5,000, and we have a recruitment panel as well. So they're still BAU, and have really put that additional governance into the organisation. And where we do have overspends, in order to protect the reserves of the council, we do ask that departments do have mitigating strategies to be able to deal with their overspends. So on the revenue side, you'll see at table 4.1.1 the overspend positions, overs and unders for the various directorates. So people services forecasting a 1.9 million over. That's predominantly in adult social care. We are seeing an underspend in children's services, which is really good news, considering where we've come on that journey over the past year. So I think that's a really good place to be. Communities in place and chief executives have got substantial underspends of over £2 million as well. So they're contributing to some of the pressures that we have within adult social care and the homelessness. On the capital side, with the forecast expenditure is 162 million, which is a forecast variance of just over 14 million against the original approved budget of 177 million. And Appendix 2 of the report does detail all the main outturn variances for the capital programme. Nothing significant to report in the Treasury Management space. The Treasury Management forecast is a net balance position. So there's nothing to report there. And as with the housing revenue account, the HRA, that's being forecast to contribute just over £1.3 million to the HRA reserved as per the budget. So that's on target as per the budget that was set. The DSG, the Dedicated Schools Grant, still has concerns. You know, we've rehearsed this a number of times before around this being a national issue, and we are forecasting an unmitigated deficit of 7.8 million, which will result in a cumulative deficit position of just shy of 24 million for the DSG. We have had the final settlement today, the local government finance settlement. It came out this afternoon. We're yet to unpick the detail of that, and will probably feature within the budget report on the next item. But in relation to the DSG deficit, the government have announced that they will be funding 90% of that historic deficit, so that 24 million that we're forecasting up to the end of March 2026. So that's really positive news in terms of we'll be getting a grant for that 90%. The challenge will be going forward and how we can bring the DSG and the high needs block into balance going forward in view of the special educational needs reform yet we're waiting to announce. So I think overall a positive picture, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. First off, welcome to Deputy Leader Councillor Hazelgrave, who's joined us. Thank you. I've got a question really. It's a difficult one to answer probably, but what's your thoughts on how sustainable some of the underspends are? In other words, crystal ball again, but are they one-offs, or do you feel that they may be sustainable over a longer period of time? Because that's obviously a very key thing, isn't it, to ensure that it doesn't return into sort of a budget pressure once we've got it under control.
So those variances have been assessed as part of the budget process to understand whether they are permanent or whether they have one-off. Where we do think they're permanent, they have featured in the budget report. So there are a few changes in that space. There are a few savings that have incorporated some of that, those permanent savings. But I think overall they're probably quite small in relation to the investment that's been put in as part of that budget process. So I'm absolutely keen that we do set a budget that is something that we can deliver
and does reflect the need that we've got within the city. And you know, just in context, the December budget report includes an additional £26 million worth of investment in those areas where we know that we've got the biggest pressures in social care and homelessness. So yeah, it's a good question, and we've reflected that and considered that as part of the budget setting process.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board? Councillor Kerr.
There's a lot of hard work that has gone in across the whole of the council to achieve this. Keeping a budget within its parameters isn't an exciting, glossy thing to be doing, but it is really vital, and I think it's something that we should be grateful for, and people of Derby should be grateful for as well. I was going to ask, though, about something which is struggling along here, which is the Market Hall, and there's a suggestion that we should be putting another £250,000 into that, or there's a pressure there for that, and there's a proposal later on in the meeting that we should be putting more money into that. And I'm just asking the question, is it time to actually review the business case and the plan for the Market Hall? The comments that I'm picking up talking to people who either raise it with me or when I've asked questions about it, people are wanting to have a market and not somewhere to go for fast food, which isn't even open in the evening. So I think we may need to look again at what's happening there, and I prefer, if we do need to look at it again, let's look at it again sooner rather than pouring yet more money in the same direction.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kerr, thanks for your comment. The Market Hall is it's new. We are just coming up to our first year, and it's one of the council's commercial opportunities. And with any commercial opportunity, we have to constantly review what we're doing. So I can confirm there is a review underway of the Market Hall from our commercial manager. That has already commenced, and I'm sure we'll be bringing something at some point in the future if we need to make any changes to the operating model or the way we do things in there. But it's still early days for the Market Hall. It's not even had its first anniversary yet.
Yeah, it's a good point, Councillor Kerr. We all want it to work really well. It's a Grade 2 listed building, so it's not going anywhere, and there's only limited things that we can do with that building in terms of keeping it upkeep, which is absolutely vital, and huge investment has been made, and we need to make it work, and we all need to support it as well. There's a lot of negative things said about the Market Hall, but actually I've been several times, and I know all of us have, and I've really enjoyed my time there, especially over Christmas. I think it was a very good atmosphere, and I'd like to support it as much as possible and ask the public to as well. Obviously there may be more traditional sort of elements that could be put back in, but we've got to allow it to breathe, allow it to make some changes positively as well. But I think it can work, it will work, and the leader, I'm sure, will probably echo those thoughts.
Very much so, Chair, and thank you. I really appreciate your support there. As Sam said, it's such early days that we do have to let these things bed in and give it every opportunity. And we absolutely need the public to get behind it. But some of the comments, Councillor Kerr, about people wanting a traditional market, I know that that's what people say. However, in reality, it doesn't play out because it was a traditional market before it closed, and it wasn't working. It wasn't populated. It wasn't being used as a traditional market. So, we have. When the doors opened last May, we had every intention of having a fresh fruit and veg stall there, but sometimes things happen, and that didn't quite follow through at the last minute. But we do have one there now. It's proving really popular, and it's bringing new footfall in all the time. Their traditional. Martin's traditional visitor base, their customer base is moving over to the market, and that the other traders are benefiting from that. Yes, there are always going to be learning curves and teething problems, and we're working through all of those. But please do keep on supporting and encouraging people to use it, because it's there for the people of Derby. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is a really special building, it's a special location as well, and I think that. I'm not speaking for the leader, but I think we all agree that the redevelopment of the marketplace, and that area is vital as well. I think at the moment, obviously, it's not thriving in the way it should, because it's our job to redevelop the slightly wider area which will support it, and that goes for the quad as well and all those other areas. I think it will all fall into place as soon as we obviously can move forward with the redevelopment of the marketplace, and obviously I'm sure the leader's got a lot to say about that in the coming weeks. Councillor Hesselgrave.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your warm welcome, which I think merits some explanation. I've kind of been double booked tonight, and I've had to attend 2 events. I won't tell you which one I prefer to attend. The event was actually the announcement of the new youth mayor and deputy mayor for the city, and hot off the press, I can tell you that Olivia Marcinovic from Leesbrook School and Selmo Petro are 2 successful candidates. He's from St Andrews, he will be deputy mayor, and Olivia will be youth mayor.
Congratulations to them both. I'm sure we will meet them at full council. Good stuff. I've lost where we are now. Is there any more questions on item 13, which is the financial monitoring? Are we okay? Good. Okay, before we move on then to item 14, Councillor Wright, I've not forgotten you. Your recommendation from in terms of item 12, which was the Pride in Place funding.
Yeah, can we cover it a little bit later with just amending it slightly?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
We have got the small item 14, which is the medium-term financial plan to move on to then. So, how are we going to deal with this one? Is it officer-led first? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just planning on introducing the report. We had the detailed directorate introduction at last scrutiny. I suppose this is part 2 of the MTFP. We had part 1 that we considered at December scrutiny and December cabinet, and the report that we have in front of us really is the final report in view of the after receiving the provisional local government finance settlement, which we did get on the 17th of December. So it was the day of cabinet. So obviously those the implications of that could not have been reflected in that December report. And as I said at the December scrutiny, in the past we've always been very accurate in being able to model the impact of any changes of that provisional settlement, but with the proposals that have been consulted on over the summer and the potential implications of the fair funding reforms, it was impossible to do that. So that first report really was a sort of a prudent, pragmatic assumption of what that local government settlement, provisional settlement might be. So on the 17th of December, we did receive the provisional funding settlement, and we were pleased to see that fair funding reforms were implemented, albeit there were some changes which did have an impact on the distribution of funding across the country. It didn't really affect Derby, but it did affect some. Those changes did affect some upper tier authorities. Some in the north, and particularly the outer London boroughs, where there was the biggest shift of distribution. So one of those changes was in relation to the changes within the children's formula, where the housing costs were included, and that did change that distribution. But as I said, it didn't impact on Derby too much. In terms of the settlement, there has been an amalgamation of lots of grants that have been rolled in. So you'll see within the report around £17 million of grants have been rolled into our core spending power, or the revenue support grant. And that's good. That's something that the sector lobbied for. The amalgamation of those grants does mean that the grant conditions prescribed with those grants do fall away, and it's left to local response of how we deal with those issues. So that's something that the sector's really lobbied on in the past. So pleased to say that the government listened and did do that amalgamation of those grants. I'm not totally convinced that all the government departments are aligned up with what MHCLG have done with the rolling in of those grants, because I think some of those government departments will still have some expectations of what we deliver, as what the outcomes are that we have to deliver as part of those grants. So, you know, we're still getting messaging from things like the Department for Education, where the prevention funding has been rolled into our main core grants, but they've still got expectations of what we deliver in children's services for that prevention funding. So there's still, I think, going to be some tensions in the system, but predominantly really good news. Also, on the positive side, it was a 3-year settlement. So for the first time in a number of years, we have got the ability to strategically plan over the medium term now. Years 2 and 3 of the settlement are indicative, but we do have that indicative 3-year budget, so that's a really, really positive place to get. And probably the most positive position is the amount of additional funding that has been brought into Derby as a result of the implementation of those fair funding reforms. Derby did gain quite significantly from that. And that's because of the sort of 3 points of principles from the funding reforms was around relative needs and deprivation, changes in population, and the low council tax base, and Derby ticked all 3 of those boxes. So we did set to gain quite significantly, and there's a reconciliation of the changes in the funding at table 4.1.4, which is page 8 of the report, and that provides a reconciliation of the changes that we've had from last financial year and what had been assumed in the December report and what additional funding we've got as part of this February report. So that, I think that's a key bit of information. In anticipation of us doing well out of the settlement, in October, as part of our medium-term financial strategy, we did set out an investment strategy. And that investment strategy had 4 points of principles around how we were going to invest any additional funding should we get more from the local government provisional settlement. And that was around setting out the 4 points of principles, which was the council plan priorities and delivering against the council plan priorities, delivering against the local government outcomes framework, which is the government's will be implementing that from April 26, and that will be their assessment of the effectiveness of the Derby City Council delivering local government services. Corporate risk was another area, those areas that feature on our strategic corporate risk register and require additional resource to mitigate those risks, and also financial sustainability. So continuing on that journey that we're on at the moment in terms of improving the council's financial sustainability and making our finances more robust in the future and being able to withstand those financial shocks. So the detail of the changes are contained within the report in terms of that additional investment. I've got officers in the room should anyone at Scrutiny board want to ask some questions around what the specifics are of those additional investments, and we're more than happy to take those questions. And then I just draw you to the numerous appendices that are included in the report, which didn't feature in the December report. Draw your attention to Appendix 7, which is the reserves and the adequacy report, which is my statement around the adequacy of reserves as the Section 151 officer, and also important to note the consultation feedback that is included in those appendices from Appendix 9 to 12 inclusive, because we did some substantial consultation, and all of those are included in the report as well. So that's the summary of the report, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll make a start. First of all, though, thank you very much. We all know, many of us know, nearly all of us know how hard it is to balance budgets in local government, and regardless of the debate that's going to ensue, I'm sure at full council, that isn't something we're going to be discussing this evening, but I'd like to thank everybody involved in the budget, councillors and officers, for their work to get to this point. It's appreciated. Can I just ask, before I bring in the other board members, when we talk about reserves, I'm sure this will be covered in most of the detail, but I always like to ask things so that it's out there for those who may be watching or watch at a later date. So what assurance do we have that the reserves are not only being bolstered by one-offs, but also by a long-term strategy? What's your view on that in terms of a sustainable sort of approach to building up the reserves over time?
So we've made some real good progress with the General Fund Reserve. The General Fund Reserve had at some points in the last couple of financial years been virtually depleted. That does sit at around just over 15 million, which is in my recommended level of the 3 to 5%. So General Fund Reserves is a really comfortable position. Although general fund reserves shouldn't be drawn out for the general risks that an organisation like ours faces day in, day out. There's an assessment of the adequacy of the reserves in Appendix 7A of the report, and the budget risk reserve is something that we need to focus our attention on going forward. That, in my view, isn't at the right level, although we have increased it, but it is still only at around probably 3 to 4 million, depending on whether we underspend this financial year or not, because if that doesn't come to fruition, then that doesn't go into those reserves. And there are still some real major risks that we're facing going forward. They're detailed in the report, but, you know, for an organisation that spends probably £750 million, a budget risk reserve of 2 to 3 million, in my view, is not sufficient enough, and we need to make more progress in that area. You'll see as part of the MTFP report there is there is additional contribution into the budget risk reserve for next year of £2 million. And it's about striking a balance, isn't it, between the adequacy of those reserves and protecting the council's financial sustainability going forward, and investing in frontline services. And it's striking that balance really. And I think I honestly think that the report is a good compromise position of that in terms of satisfying myself as the Section 151 officer, but also providing significant investment into frontline services for the residents of Derby that pay their council tax, and you can see that in the detail of the report.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, but in relation to the discussion on the government funding for Chaddiston West, I've got a new recommendation, but rather than talking about it now, I've got a recommendation for this discussion. I wonder whether we could do them both together rather than...
Let's leave the Chaddiston till the end of this item, if that's okay. If we just deal with this item now, it'll get confusing otherwise, I think.
Okay. Yeah, my first point is an observation, really, in relation to the consultation. On our last meeting, we had the interim results. Well, there wasn't any results. It was the number of people who responded, which I think was quoted at 24, which across the city is just, well, not really of any significance at all. Not that all of the responses were important in their own right, but it doesn't give a very picture. So the day after that meeting, I circulated this to our Facebook accounts, and it immediately went up 300%, but only to 72 responses. And a lot of the feedback, apart from giving some interesting comments and proposals, was that they found it very, very difficult to actually fill in the form, very complex, which in my view, and a lot of people said that they gave up straight away because it was very difficult to navigate. And I filled it in myself, so I can actually, resonate with that picture. So I think the issue is we need to provide, and there's probably a question in this in terms of how much credence have we put on those 72. I do recognise we did, there were 3 emails, I think, and a couple of community groups, but, you know, really from residents themselves, 72 across the city, and that's with and I suspect, and I've been told that probably if not all of them, the majority came from Chaddiston East, again, not a very representative sample across the city. So my plea for next year is that, and I know Alison's already agreed that we will have sight of the consultation beforehand, but I think we need to make it much more easy for people to access to provide that feedback. So that's just an observation. I've got two questions. One, and I might have missed this, Alison, because I was trying to do the recommendation, but at the last meeting, we talked about the uplift in funding, where the investment was going to be directed to. The report states it's 9%, or I think 27 million. You caveated that last time by taking out the presumed increase in council tax and business tax and the incorporation of other grants as well. And I think it got down to around 6.2 or 6.3%. Have we got an actual real figure in terms of what that uplift looks like? Because I think that's important, because it's been very much heralded this is a 9% increase in our funding, and in reality it's not, it's a lot less. So I don't know whether you've got the answer to that question now. But
should we pause there and see if we can have a response?
I think table that I referred to, 4.1.4 on page 8 of the report, gives you that clarity of what grants have been included in there. It identifies what the council tax increases are and what the government grants are. So I think that is the table that is really helpful, and based on the questions I was getting before around, because it depends what question you ask as to what the answer is. I'm not being difficult by that, but it really does depend on that. So I think that table there is the answer to the questions.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Alison. Could you just quickly go through that on page 8, just line by line, just the table, very quickly? Would it offer any context?
Yeah. So this is in the comparison of the movement of funding for the previous financial year from 25-26. To this year, and you can see the total increase in funding is £44 million. But that £44 million isn't all new money. Some of it is grants that have been rolled in. So there's £17 million worth of that were grants rolled in. Some of it is additional council funding, which is 27 million, and then some of it is around what we generate ourselves through the decisions we make around council tax increases, the changes in our council tax base, so where we've got new properties, and the success of collection rates as well. So you can see there that that sort of gives us a little bit of context and breakdown into that funding. So the government funding is the £27 million, really, which is the additional funding that we got from government. And whilst that sounds an awful lot of money, and it is a lot more than we've ever had in the past, I'm just going to contextualise that with what the pressures were in the December report. The pressures were £26 million. That's funding inflation, pay awards, and all the pressures in terms of the big high spending budgets that we have.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've got another question and a recommendation. This question is really for the Cabinet, and I'm referring to paragraph 4.22 and the table at 4.48, where 4.22 describes the approach to the budget for the medium term, and the table describes where the additional investment is going to go, a series of categories, which was going to be based on public consultation, but as we've just heard, we've got very little...
Sorry, Councillor, is it page 9 and 10 you're talking about? Or just to clarity? Yeah, I was just a bit confused on that one. Just which page is it, Councillor?
Well, mine's paper copy's not... It's paragraph 4, medium-term financial strategy. It's only one paragraph. Talks about the strategy. It doesn't really say a lot, which is my point. And but the table of investments we've covered before in the last meeting. So the question is that we were going to invest in these priority areas. We haven't got much public consultation on which to build. I can see very little correlation between that table and the 80 odd line items of new spend, which appears, when you're looking at each of the line items, that we're making the new spend fit the available budget rather than adhering to some strategy. So my question for the Cabinet is, a lot of the public discourse that you've been having focuses very much on the cost of living and the need to actually support our residents through cost of living. What we appear to be doing in here is increasing the tax and spending more with very little impact on the pocket of our residents. So my question is that was that designed that we weren't looking to support our residents because we could have taxed less, we could have reduced council tax, we could have supported our businesses by reducing the business rates rather than spending a lot of items. I recognise we're creating new jobs, but these are all public sector jobs. I don't think there's any private sector jobs in this, and we know that the city is struggling through unemployment, particularly with young people not in employment or training. The figures are going up for that. And if we're not going to spend it on not spend it, we've heard issues around have we got sufficient reserves. The cost of borrowing is not going to come down sharply. The cost of borrowing generally is very, very high for government and local government. Shouldn't we be prioritising those things? I'm not going to make a recommendation out of this because I think it's a matter for council, but it'd be interesting to actually inform our judgments if that is the case, that this was a strategy to spend and tax. Thank you.
I think a lot of this is going to be borne out in the full council debate, but Councillor Peafield, if you'd like to comment.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's maybe a bit of confusion, really, Councillor Wright, because the financial strategy that we set is about making sure that we have sufficient reserves, that we're protecting the council's finances. We also have to follow the government criteria that has been set, and we also are investing in the council plan. So, as far as the strategy is concerned, we're doing exactly that. And you ask about the impact on people's pockets. Well, you're right in a certain respect that balancing a budget is always a balance between are we reducing tax or are we investing in services? And, that is the question that we all have to ask ourselves when additional funds come along. But this is the first time that additional funds, significant additional funds, have come along since 2010. And since 2010, we've had £250 million cut from our council's budget. And that's not even the accumulative amount that we've lost year on year on year. So our priority was to start to be able to put back into our services that have been cut, reduced, stripped away, threadbare for the last 15, 16 years. And if you turn to Appendix 5, in particular, page 44, 45, 46, when you look at where we're investing, it's almost all in place. We've got two and a half pages of investments into place. That's frontline services. So, we've listened to the consultation, we've listened to what people are saying, and genuinely what they want is to see a difference on their doorstep. They want to see, clean streets. They want it to be weeded. They want bins off streets. They want to see less fly tipping. They want to see more public protection. They want to see. They want their high street to feel safe. So all of these things that people have said, we are responding to. And I think from those lines, especially there in Appendix 5, you can genuinely see the difference. If you compare to 3/4 of a page in CYP, less than a page in adult health, less than half a page in chief executives, place is where we have placed the funding.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wright and then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you for that response. Can I make a recommendation as well? I've sent you a draft of it already to save time.
Can we call that up?
Members will be aware that we had an Armed Forces Covenant review last year, and a recommendation to full council, which was agreed across party, was that we would provide a small fund similar to that local councillors get, so that the Armed Forces Champion could support local reservists, local cadet groups for their voluntary activities, etc., things like uniform for less advantaged children. That went to Cabinet, and the Cabinet said it would be looked at budget time. I can't find that in the budget proposals, so I've suggested unless either Alison and Tony can tell me that it's in there, there's a recommendation there that we actually support that and include it in the budget.
Okay, I'll just read out the recommendation. Yeah, I mean, it's straight into amendment, but I'm not, it's your recommendation to board. It's not a problem at all, but Executive Scrutiny recommends that Cabinet support the Armed Forces Covenant Review Working Group recommendation that an annual fund of £5,000, similar to Ward Council's locality budget per councillor, is allocated to the Armed Forces Champion to support local Armed Forces cadets, reservist groups, or group for the benefit of local communities, this budget to form part of the MTFP. So the first query is, has that been picked up elsewhere, Alison, to your recollection?
It hasn't been picked up now. What I would suggest, if you were wanting to take that forward, Councillor Wright, then that could be done as a motion at the full council and a budget amendment at that point.
Okay, it's still a recommendation. I do agree, and I think at least it sparks a debate, but I suggest that it probably will need to be returned to at the budget debate, but I'm not going to stop you putting it forward. It's your right to do that. So if you want to seek a seconder, and the Cabinet can obviously take a look at this at the Cabinet meeting and make a decision. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it rested with the Cabinet. That was where it was remitted to. The councillor responsible, the Cabinet member, isn't here tonight. I'm sure she would support
it's a recommendation to Cabinet, and I'm sure they'll consider it in due course, well, in the next few days. So, all in favour of that recommendation? 5. Any against? No. Okay. I'm not preempting what Cabinet will say, but I suspect we may be having that debate in full council. CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of detail, just to avoid the potential for any amendments coming forward about reducing business rates, which I think Councillor Wright mentioned in his... we're obviously not in a position to be able to reduce business rates. They're set nationally by the government. We collect them on the government's behalf. They're distributed by government back to us. So just a point of detail, and I wouldn't want there to be any misunderstanding that there is the opportunity for the Cabinet to put forward a proposal where they can reduce business rates, because they can't.
Or an amendment. And obviously, I think we all are encouraged to ensure that we speak to officers prior to full council budget debate to ensure any amendments are all comply with the legalities, etc. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Sorry, Chambers.
Thank you. I just want to reassure Councillor Wright really on a few things. So whilst we didn't have a big input into the budget consultation, I agree. I think if we could simplify it, that'd be amazing. However, I don't know about your party, but we're out every week knocking doors, speaking to residents in Derby, asking what they actually want, and that has been fed into this consultation as well. And just to reassure you on the cost of living, it's not that we've forgot about cost of living. You know, we're investing again in the lift tool, which has seen some incredible outcomes, just to name a few. You know, 153 pensioners supported so far, just under £600,000 to those people. 56 households identified in crisis. We've also got the new Crisis Resilient Fund, which will obviously be helping people on lower incomes. So there's still lots of things being done for those families as well. But like I say, feedback from people has been about what they see and the difference on their doorstep. So we're going to be supporting both. So I hope that reassures you.
Before I come on to Councillor Eyre, I mean, obviously there's we all have disagreements on the way things should be balanced, and also in principles in many cases. But I think one thing we do share is ensuring that residents see changes, investment on their doorstep, in their communities, in their street. And I've always said this, that council tax increases are always something which is very emotive and, you know, is always a hot topic, quite rightly. What we have to do as a council is ensure that people who pay the council tax see the difference in their neighbourhoods. I think where we have the issue, regardless of who's in control of this council, the issue we have is if people can't see demonstrable changes in their community and investments in their community, that's when they get angry that they're paying increased council tax, business rates for local businesses. They have to see results in their neighbourhood. So it doesn't matter who's running the council, that principle stands. Yeah. And it's our job collectively as ward councillors and also the executive to try and deliver that at a local level. Councillor Eyre and then Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Several questions really just related, they're all short questions, but related to the table at 4.3.4. And to borrow Councillor Hazelgrave's phrase, I thank the Cabinet for wetting their powder and emphasising some of the areas where their funding is looking to be awarded to now with the additional funding. And additional funding is always to be welcomed for the Council. So just wanting, there's a few points really, I don't mind if it's Cabinet or officers that answer the questions, but around the around compactor days, great to see these coming back, but are we looking at all wards having these? Are we looking at the price per tonnage? Does that still exist? And if it is all wards, are we looking at quotas? This ward can have one, this ward can have two, this ward can have three, that sort of thing within the price that we've got on there. For the CCTV uplift, sort of how and what will that mean in terms of CCTV monitoring? What's the sort of information behind that one? For the city centre celebrations, are we earmarking specific celebrations that we think are going to have funding? Have we identified now which ones we're looking at? And then for the public safety, the piercing and tattoo parlours, can we have a little bit more on this one? How do we identify that piercing and tattoo parlours were a target for that additional resource in there? The same for the community safety, the allocation, the additional staff focusing on the city centre. How many staff do we think that's going to get us? For two more, the extreme weather response. Is that gritting? Is that what we were talking about at the last full council meeting? And what will that 50k achieve going forward? What will be a sort of target for that to deliver? And finally, on the capacity to deliver local government reorganisation, there's £1 million attached to that, which is a massively significant amount of money. And we've all agreed that that national government is forcing this on us as local government. We have two members of Parliament amongst the councillor cohort. Have we sought to get national government to pay for that, given they're the ones forcing us to do it?
Councillor Eyre, you've just listed about 15 questions there. I've completely lost track. Can we just, two at a time, just try and just quickly go back? We don't want to be... Oh, did you?
Yeah.
The leader has them all. Okay, over to you, leader.
Well, I'll have a go. I might pass.
Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Dinser was first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, in response to Councillor Eyre's comments now, but also Councillor Wright earlier, I think we need to be careful that the budget is a particular point of investment, but we are doing things throughout the year about tackling cost of living and trying to support the most vulnerable citizens in Derby. So, for example, you would have noticed in a Cabinet paper not too long ago about council tax support, and that was to actually invest nearly £1.3 million to help the most vulnerable, who are the most challenged in terms of the cost of living situation that we all face, but it's particularly pertinent for people people who are working but still in poverty. and those people. So the council tax support was a particular element to make sure that 1.3 million was invested in those particular people so that they could actually afford to pay their council tax rather than have to renege on it, which is a debt onto the council anyway. And if you remember that report, it talked about over the year, actually more council tax being paid by actually offering support to those who find it most difficult. And therefore we're doing less chasing as well. So there are things which are in place and have been used throughout the year, but also in this budget. Last meeting of this executive scrutiny, there were quite rightly questions about where the funding is going, and we couldn't say that at that time because the finance officer and the funding settlement was not totally understood and analysed. That has been analysed now, and this paper, and 4.34 in particular, is focusing on something that was actually mentioned quite a lot in the last exec scrutiny, which is about community safety. This reflects the issues that were raised and the issues that, as Chair, you've mentioned, impact on the street. And this additional funding, which has been confirmed and understood now reflects that particular element, amongst many others, that particular one in terms of community safety. There's a raft of initiatives and posts that are going to be put in place to tackle the situation that we've highlighted, identified, not only just in the city centre, but just generally around community safety. So I think we need to be we need to actually welcome this because it's actually reflecting what was actually said in this exec scrutiny last time we met about community safety. And I think Councillor, you probably made the comment about you'd hope that there will be funding made available for community safety. And here it is. Here it is. So let's look at this. And one of the other things which was, I think, came up in the last exec scrutiny, and apologies because some of the questions couldn't be answered then, this report, response to those, was about possibly not enough information to sort of make comment. The reality is this report says that there have been no redundancies required in this budget round because of the settlement of government, but also about the financial probity and the responsible management, so that we're not dipping into reserves, but we're actually having meeting whatever our savings targets are and more. So I think the whole report should be welcomed by this exec scrutiny because it's actually funding being targeted to the concerns that were raised in this scrutiny board last time, and here we are actually responding to those in many other areas, not just the one I've just highlighted. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have Councillor Martin, Councillor Wright, Councillor Kerr and Councillor Khan, but I would like to bring... Sorry, I'd like to bring the leader in if that's possible, because it may be that we can just answer some of the questions that Councillor Eyre raised, and then we can move on. Is that okay?
Yep, we can have a go. I'll probably work backwards and may defer to some of my colleagues. But in terms of LGR, we just had a meeting today in Losco of the majority of the leaders across the county. And, we're all going to have to be putting money aside to start to pay for this. The point being that once LGR comes into effect, we'll be saving, I think it's around about £40 million a year collectively. So, the whole thing is going to cost about 66 million. But by year 3, it will have paid for itself and we will be actually reaping the benefits of those savings. So that was always the point from government, not for them to actually fund it, but for the savings that are made to actually cover the cost of it. And then we start to see the benefit of it actually quite quickly for us compared to some other authorities. So that's LGR. And on the city celebrations, we're looking at in year 1, which is 2026, that's focused on, the majority of it focused on the celebration of our twinning with Osnabrück. So it's 50 years since we were twinned with Osnabrück, so there will be an additional festival in the city to celebrate that. Our friends from Osnabrück will be coming over to enjoy the festivities. And we hope that that'll be a really good celebration this year. And next year, that funding increases because we are actually celebrating the 50th anniversary of Derby becoming a city. So, you know, we want it to be a citywide celebration. We want to make a big thing of it. We want everybody to feel involved and a part of it. So we've budgeted accordingly to really give Derby, you know, put us on the map and really make a noise about that. I will pass over, first of all, to Councillor Anwaha about the compactor and the extreme weather.
Through you, Chair. Well, Councillor, I'm sure, I mean, I saw what you did there. You looked for some of the things you had raised to see if we had listened to you. And indeed, we did, because as a Labour, we don't just listen to residents, we also listen to our fellow councillors and your concerns. And really what we want to do is to ensure that we keep on making a difference on the doorstep of residents. So when it comes to things like the extreme weather, for instance, whilst I said before, this wasn't the best from the east sort of weather that we had earlier on in the year. However, what we saw was that there was a need to review our grid bin provisions to bring them not just in line with residents' expectations, but to make sure that also where, in some instances, neighborhood boards had bought some of these grid bins, we can ensure that we capture them and work with ward councillors, work with residents to put them not just in the right place, but make sure that they're filled all the time. With the compactor days, now, if you're in a ward like mine, Markworth and New Zealand, you know that there are some times in a year where students are either moving in or moving out, and this causes a lot of friction for local residents because of sometimes just flight. And we can't, because we don't know where these residents have moved on to, we can't actually find them, as it were, for leaving this flight tipping. But what we can do for our residents to make that difference on their doorstep is to ensure that we provide avenues for people to get rid of their waste. And it's going to be different according to the ward. You know, so for Markworth and New Zealand, it might be during the student moving in and moving out. But for other wards, those times may be different. So what we're going to do, again, continuing in the tradition of listening to not just residents, but to councillors, is to work with all councillors to find out what the peculiarities of your wards are. We're looking at providing these services 2 times a year, but by, of course, listening to you to know when the highs and the lows are, we are able to ensure that we have an equitable distribution of these services across Derby.
Thank you. And then I'll pass over to Councillor Khan regarding piercings and tattoos.
Yes, sorry, Chair. It's the first time in 15, 16 years we've got a budget where we're not talking about reducing our employees, reducing our frontline services, reducing, in actual fact, everything was reduction. Here we are now, we have a budget where we're investing in our city, in our people, cleaner pavements, compactor days has been mentioned, CCTV being added, not taken away. And I still can't, you know, sort of look at it and see people saying that they should be this, should be that. Right. So just very quickly on to what Councillor Eyre said about the tattoos. The officer being brought in is not just for the tattoos. They will be looking at other things as well. So it's not specifically just for that. But in other terms, we have investment in a reduction of bed and breakfast through Abbey Lodge, which was a nationally recognised. So this is a very, very good budget. It's welcomed by the city. Councillor Wright, I understand what you said about the response in terms of the survey, but we have people going the Labour Party goes in 17 wards, knocking on doors, finding out what people want, and we reacted to that. Thank you.
Just because I heard what the question was specifically, on the piercing and tattoo parlours, all of them will be checked. It's about hygiene and cleanliness and ensuring that they're at the right standards, so that people aren't getting infections and so on. So it's recommended by our, health and safety colleagues, our Director of Health. It's something that's really, really important. And I've heard members of the public talking about it as well. Responsible tattoo parlours welcome this because, they take great pride in their work and their cleanliness. But there are some, unfortunately, that let us down. And there are rising submissions of people going to hospital because they've got skin infections because of tattoos or piercings not being cleaned enough. So it's something that's really important and that we've not been able to do for a long time. We've not had the capacity, but this is putting that into there. So I hope that will be really welcomed. And I'll just pass on to Councillor Chambers to just cover up the CCTV and potentially just might need to ask a further question about what you meant by the staff, the city centre staffing. Thank you.
You'll be pleased to know I'll keep it short and sweet. So we've been trialling, so whilst the cameras are rolling 24/7 and recording, they're not always being monitored. So we've increased that by 104 hours per month for the last 2 or 3 months, which has obviously seen quite a good impact in terms of our reactive time. So we've decided to invest in that, given that public safety, especially in the city centre and at the top of Normanton Road, is something that is brought up quite regularly. So I think that answers that question. And then if I could just get clarification on your other question, because there's a few things under community safety.
Through you, Chair. So it's the one that reads, it's between leaf clearance and weed control. So community safety, additional staff focusing on the city centre. It's on the second page, about 7 up from Chief Execs. From the Chief. 100,000.
Yes, so hopefully if we get this through the budget, that is going to include, and I don't want to give too much away, a member of staff and a really good initiative, I believe.
Just one second. Can I just say, really happy with the board members' questions. Councillor Khan, take what you're saying, but we're here to scrutinise. Obviously, Councillor Eyre has mentioned a few things that he does agree with, and he's welcomed as well. It's not all going to be as all just agreeing all the time. We're here to, sometimes be awkward and to scrutinise and put a spanner in the works, if you like, to get the debate going a little bit and to challenge it. And Councillor Eyre is doing that. So, but I'm really happy with the debate, and Councillor Wright as well. So full council is going to be where it probably is more of a debate. But yeah, we're only doing our job, is what I'm trying to say, Councillor Khan. Councillor Martin, did you want to contribute? I'm sorry, again, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, yes, Chair. Just very quickly, just to very much endorse what Councillor Peatfield said, we should really we are extremely pleased at this very, very significant increase of funding we've had from the government for the people of Derby. It makes all the difference. And as Councillor Peatfield said, I think people will see a difference on the doorstep, and that will be, I think, across all wards in the city, because we know everybody contributes and everybody deserves something back. And we're very focused on that. But I would just like to, as you might even predict, or actually rather expected, predictable even, that I think that what is often overlooked is this adult social care element, which always has the lion's share of the council's budget, and we are putting 8 million into adult social care again this year. I mean, is it enough? Probably not, because the demand is rising all the time, but that does very much go to protecting people, the vulnerable, the elderly, the disabled. And I think, so whereas many of the stuff we're investing in is actually, will people see it? There will be a difference on the doorstep. It's what they want to see. But I do think that this great, huge budgets, which often is treated with silence around adult social care, is often dealing with what people don't want to see or wouldn't want to see on their street, people next door, in their own families, which would be, people neglected, people abandoned, people under-supported in their old age. And so I just say this really, just to, and remember that there's the social care precept in that council tax increase, and that's also usually forgotten. And so I always thank the people of Derby for paying that, because it is increasingly a significant proportion of the money that is spent on people's care. And the adult social budget is massively spent on paying for people's care over any other staff costs, etc. So just a reminder that we are investing in that again. We will do so going forward, and it remains a significant part of the work of the council. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely huge spend that is sometimes not appreciated. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Wright. You're next, and then I think I've got a contribution from Councillor Ndukwe. Oh, and Councillor Rawson after that. So, Councillor Wright, did you indicate? I think you did. Oh, Councillor Kerr, I do apologise. You're after Councillor Wright.
Yeah. My question is, have we taken our eye off the ball regarding savings? Next year, we're planning to save about 7 million, of which 41% is through a one-off chief executive employees pension contribution that's one-off contribution. So a huge percentage of next year's savings is coming from something that we've got no control over and is really a gift out of the blue, which obviously we'll take. But it seems to me that with this huge amount of additional cash that we've been provided with, we're not providing the same due diligence of driving out efficiencies, which I'm sure we would all agree with, that across all services are still capable of being delivered.
Alison?
Yeah, the superannuation savings isn't one-off. It's 3 million every year. It's cumulative in there, so the saving will be delivered year 1, year 2, year 3. It doesn't come back in, and I suppose that is dependent, and then in the 4th year it will be dependent on the valuation of the pension fund again. So we'll respond to that. In terms of savings, as you see, we've got £7 million worth of savings in the budget report. We've still got lots of work that is not defined enough to be able to feature in the budget report yet, but the delivery board is still ongoing with its 4 main work streams that are working really hard. You know, the digital and AI work stream, property rationalisation, efficiency and innovation. They're all continue to operate, continue to be chaired through the delivery board by the chief exec. So there's still the desire to make efficiencies and improvements, but unless there's an actually planned delivery for those, they won't feature in this budget report. So I would imagine that we'll probably see in years 2 and 3 some further savings as we respond to the changes in the budget, which we do as a matter of course.
Councillor Wright, does that answer your question?
No, not really. Last time, when I asked a question, you said it was going to be front-loaded into year 1. And, you know, I do take your point that this is because the pension fund has been particularly profitable. Next time it's revalued, it might be the opposite case as well. So I think my point is that 43% of next year's is accounted for through that increase in pension funds, which leaves a significant, 47% of the rest, which is only 7 million out of our total budget of 330 odd million, not a huge percentage point. So I think the question for me is, I take the point, but how does that compare to what we've achieved in previous years, or what are relevant local or similar local authorities achieving? Because it does appear on the surface that we are spending a lot and not giving the same amount of diligence to driving out of efficiencies. And I think everything that comes through this scrutiny board, we've identified in a lot of cases where we're looking for funding, where efficiencies could be made. And, you know, that's been demonstrated through adult social services, for example. You know, we're not suggesting they're all just going to dry up from next year onwards, I take it.
Oh, see ya.
Yeah, I see the point Councillor Wright is making, Chair, but the reality is over the course of the last few years, this council has delivered, I think Alison alluded to it, and the leader may have alluded to it as well, you know, £250 million worth of savings over the last kind of 10, 15 years, which is not to be sniffed at. And generally speaking, we deliver a level of efficiencies somewhere in the region of, you know, kind of 5 to 10 million, probably on average over that period of time. Some years it's been obviously more, some it's been less, but the target of 7 million next year, I think, is a reasonable level of saving. I think the other thing to say is, you know, the financial position of this council has improved markedly over the last 18 months, 2 years or so. That has been down to, and thank you for saying what you said earlier, and thank you to Councillor Kerr, who also made the point, because that is about hard work of the officers and the support, obviously, and the leadership of the cabinet. That's how these things happen. In terms of having a clear financial strategy, we've got, as we've heard already this evening, a forecast outturn of a £2.5 million underspend. We're also going to come on and talk about the Q3 performance report, which will talk about, in the year of an underspend of £2.5 million, outstanding children's social care, outstanding youth justice services. There won't be too many councils that can point to that in terms of a track record of delivery, both in terms of services and in terms of its financial position. Our overall reserves position is improving to something like £15 million. So I think we've got to take it in the round that we will continue to do the hard work that we've done. As Alison alluded to, I chair the delivery board. So we've got various strands of work that look at ensuring that this council continues to be financially sustainable. And we will continue to do that. And of course, we have to have one eye, as you've already said this evening, Chair, on local government reorganisation, which will be here sooner rather than later. And there will be significant opportunities. You said, you know, I think the leader said £44 million worth of savings. I think that's probably a prudent estimate of the level of savings that we can deliver. But that's something that we will obviously be looking at. But I think the overall financial position of this council is improving. That's not to say we take our foot off the pedal, we take anything for granted. But we will continue to do the hard work. Certainly, you know, my team can give the scrutiny committee this evening the absolute assurance that we will continue to do the hard yards to ensure that councils continues to be financially sustainable.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Kerr, Councillor Ndukwe, if he wants to contribute, and then Councillor Rawson, and we'll try and move on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I want to start by welcoming the addition of the Energy Efficiency Officer and the Green Technology and Renewable Energy Officers. Within the papers tonight, we've seen that the change to LED street lighting has brought us significant savings within our revenue budget. And we are really lucky to have a lighting engineer who takes an interest in this field and has put together the business case for doing more change to LED lighting, which should in the future bring us forward further reductions in our energy costs. And that is just, street lighting is just one very small part of what we do as an authority. So I am hoping that these additional officers for, not much more than £100,000 will be able to drive efficiencies within our estate, within our workings, and actually deliver more savings in the future. So I want to welcome that. I also want to mention the question, what is happening? We've had the flagged up before, the community safety additional staff focusing on the city centre, which was 100,000. And on the page before that, we have community safety, one additional neighbourhood officer for the city centre, which is 80,000 next year. The summaries that we've got here don't really tell us what's going on. And equally, I'd like to know what the community safety, serious violence prevention and intervention, including community awareness campaigns, actually is. It's a really grand description, but what it is when it's on the ground, and whether other things fit within that, you can't really see. So, can I have some expansion of those shared with me in some ways, so that I can see what's actually going on? And maybe not in this meeting, but at some other point. And as a more specific question, we've got an additional 300,000, which is quite a lot of money for staffing, or perhaps it isn't staffing, additional resource for property, asset and procurement services. And just to know what that actually is and why it's needed.
If anyone can answer it now, otherwise we can wrap that up, Councillor Kerr. It's page 10, by the way, isn't it?
That's page 11 mostly.
Oh,
page
mostly.
10 and 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we can make a note to have Councillor Kerr, you can share it with the board if that's okay with you, Councillor Kerr, so we can be included in the response. So it's a clarification on the community safety item, both items, the additional neighbourhood officer, serious violence prevention. I'm sorry, what was the third one, Councillor Kerr, on the other page?
The third one was additional resources for property, asset and procurement services. On the following page, Chair, we've got a long list of rolled-in grants that require pressure.
Yep.
And again, I'm not quite sure what rolled-in grants that require pressure mean, unless we're having to put back that £17 million as an additional pressure because the grants have gone, and whether it's actually a sleight of hand and we don't actually do anything, or whether it's a real pressure.
Okay. Have we captured that, or can we deal with some of that now?
So I'll pick the grants issue up then. So I wouldn't say it's not a sleight of hand, Councillor Kerry. It's just the 70 million is recognising the grants that don't come in separately now. They come in as part of our funding arrangements. So we're giving the departments the monies that they used to get from the grants. So the grants the money's come in transferred into our funding, and we're passing it on to the departments. I think, shall we provide Sam can provide a response to the others.
Okay, Sam.
Thanks, Chair. So just in terms of the serious violence prevention and intervention, including community awareness campaigns, we used to receive funding for serious violence and violence against women and girls initiatives. That funding stopped, so this proposal is to put funding in so we can redeliver things that we used to around knife crime, violence against women and girls and other things. So it'll be things that you've seen before, Councillor Kerr, that we stopped doing because we didn't have the funding for. In terms of the neighbourhood officer for the city centre from year 2, so that is what it says it is. That's an officer to support the city centre manager in the city centre to do neighbourhood-based work with a city centre focus. And I think we've explained, Councillor Chambers explained the additional member of staff in the city centre, and there's 100k in there for the officer and any resources they need to ensure we've got a visible presence in the city centre for shoppers so they feel safer in the city. Have I covered everything? Sorry.
Emily?
And I can pick up on the additional resource for property assets and procurement. So this is 4 additional posts across those 3 services. So a new quantity surveyor and a project manager within the property consultancy services team. This is to help address the property maintenance backlog that we have within that service and to deliver the key property projects that we have ongoing. So those aspirations of the asset rationalisation programme, the additional works that we're looking to deliver across Storage Road Depot, in parks, etc. There is 1 additional post within the estates team that is again to support our asset rationalisation and to allow us to get our assets in the best possible shape ahead of local government reorganisation. And the 3rd post is 1 additional post within the procurement service to meet the new mandatory, to fill a requirement to deliver the new mandatory requirements of the Procurement Act, which has an emphasis on social value and ethical procurement, and to also help us meet the forward pipeline for procurement activity, which currently significantly exceeds our current establishment. And I'll note that councillors do have a councillor training session tomorrow night, at which there's a session on our procurement function.
Thank you. That saves offline. It's all been dealt with. Okay, can I just ask, before I bring in Councillor Rawson, whether Councillor Ndukwe wants to still contribute? No, okay, so I'll go Councillor Rawson and then Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Chair. We've delved into quite a lot of the detail this evening in terms of the budget, and we'll come to the political side of things at the budget setting meeting itself in a couple of weeks. But I think it does need commenting on at the at scrutiny here what a significant budget this is, in terms of the first time in about 15 years that we're actually putting money into public services and investing rather than cutting. And that has been a consistent feature over a very long period, and the impact of that has been felt by our residents. So I do want to say it's extremely welcome, this budget, in terms of the investment that's going into frontline services, and that people will see the difference. As you've mentioned yourself, Chair, it's important that people do see the difference, and I think that's what the budget will deliver. So it's we'll come to the political debate, no doubt, and be able to make our own suggestions and tweaks, but the headline that comes out of it is that we've got a central government that actually believes in local government now, that trusts us to get on with the job, that's willing to put its money where its mouth is in terms of investing in the services that local government provides, and I think believes in the difference that we can make to people's lives, and look forward to the budget debate when we can explore some of those ideas in even more detail. So I do think that we should be welcoming the budget and the papers that we've got before us, and the potential that it's going to give us.
Thank you. Councillor Dinser and Councillor Eyre, I think we should draw to a close on this item then, if you can do that.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I just want to support and endorse what Councillor Orson has just said. It is a positive budget. It's an investing budget. And as the Cabinet Member for Digital and Organisational Transformation, and with Councillor Koslowski looking at finance and budgets, I think Councillor Wright's comments earlier about efficiencies and savings, reserves, and not being complacent, I can assure you from my perspective, and certainly from Councillor Koslowski's perspective, we are not complacent. Many of the savings, significant savings and efficiencies that are being driven have been through digital and AI, despite people's concerns about whether it's real or not. It is real. The officers in this council have worked tremendously well to deliver on those, and those are not going to stop. The boards are set up, the drive between the Cabinet and the officers in terms of continually looking for efficiencies and better ways of working, which has realised lots of positives for this council, and other councils are looking to us and emulating us and wanting to take advice from us about how we've done that. That is a positive. So that is a contrast to years and years where we are trying to find efficiencies, and some of members who were in executive roles previously will know that unsubstantiated, desperate needs were put in place to actually make savings which were not being able to be delivered, and you had to dip into reserves to compensate for the efficiency not being realised. What we've shown in the last year, 2 years, and it has been helped by the fact that the government funding is supporting local government services, as Councillor Dawson said, than it has been able to do before. But it has meant that we've been able to look at efficiencies which are realistic and are deliverable, rather than actually having to be desperately having to put savings in because to balance the books. So I think that's the report and the budget paper does does reflect that, but I'm sure it's not probably been brought out as effectively in the debate and in the presentation. And that's a marked change in terms of where we are and how we actually to deliver with financial responsibility some of the savings, and then have savings targets for the future, Councillor Wright, which are realistic and deliverable, rather than actually in a desperate situation to balance the books. I think that's something that people need to reflect and look at the budget and where we are and the settlement we've had and the work that's been done to get efficiencies and actually get underspends as well. So I don't think that will stop. And certainly from my perspective, in my role as a digital and organisational transformation cabinet member, and we will make sure that we work with our officers to continue to look for efficiencies and bring them forward as and when they can be done.
Efficiencies and better services. Because obviously AI, I've said it before, that it's a tool which is going to obviously have increasing use, positive use within the council, but we have to ensure that it does deliver for residents, especially elderly residents. So I say it again, AI is going to play a huge part moving forward, especially as we go forward, say 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But we need to ensure that our elderly residents aren't cut off, and we do have that human side of the council as well, and it doesn't disappear.
As I've said before, I totally agree with you, and that is what we're focused on, the human element. And where we've had successes is where the human bit can be enhanced and enabled to do their job properly, so that the heavy lifting is done by AI and digital services. And that's how we've delivered so far, and that's how we'll continue to deliver. And, you know, reflecting on that concern, we are open to that and sort of will be focused on that.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre, if you would like to finish off.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the Cabinet members for the answers they provided to the array of questions that I asked them before, and to reiterate a point that you made, Chair, in response to Councillor Dinsey. Our role is to scrutinise on this committee and to ask those difficult questions. I don't know where on earth any Cabinet member would ever get the idea that I would ask a tricky or difficult question designed to get them to admit something that perhaps they'd rather not do. I don't know where you'd ever get that impression from. But in all seriousness, our job is to ask those questions and to get to that detail. And Councillor Dinsey, you mentioned there about savings in previous budgets that didn't have lines to them. Well, the exec board at the time should have spotted that, and they clearly didn't ask the questions that got to those points. And our job is to make sure that you haven't come up with a message that sounds good, slapped a figure onto it and said, we're going to deliver on these things and actually the money's not sufficient or there's not a plan behind it. Our job is to make sure that doesn't happen, and I'm grateful for the answers that have been provided to the questions that I've asked and to questions other members have asked. But as important as what's in the budget is what's not in the budget, and I come back to the point from the recommendation from the Communities Public Protection and Housing Scrutiny Board, around that element of we did pass a unanimous recommendation about funding for lighting on parks. We haven't touched on it in the other questions that have been asked. So I wonder if any Cabinet member can confirm whether that recommendation is set to be honoured in the 26-27 budget and whether money will be available to ensure that that lighting on the parks and open spaces where it's been removed is going to be replaced.
Councillor Ndukwe.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. And as I said earlier, you will be pleased to know that we don't just listen to residents, we listen to our fellow councillors as well, especially after you dragged me out in the pouring rain to Oakwood Park. I had to ensure that we don't do that again. But just to confirm that 26,000 has been allocated in 2025-26 to make solar lighting safe, following inspections and including whatever replacements may be required. A further £28,000 was made available in 26-27 to develop designs and decide the most appropriate long-term lighting solutions. So you can rest assured, Councillor Eyre, that as I did say to you when we met, even before the recommendations, that this will definitely be looked at, not least because the safety of our residents as they use some of those parks and the pathways through the parks is uppermost in our minds. So again, you can rest assured that we've listened and there's provisions made.
Can I just say thank you again for the answer?
Okay, thank you very much. There is going to be much more of this, obviously, as we move forward, the full council budget debate, as has been mentioned before, but we're going to draw a line under this one now and move on. So, Councillor Wright, I haven't forgotten. Are you ready with your recommendation from item, whatever it was?
That was weeks ago, Chair.
Yes, it seems like it. Item 12, yes. So, okay, I'll read it for you. Executive Scrutiny recommends that within the flexibility of the criteria set by the government, the relevant cabinet member ensures that the board will be led by an independent chair approved by the local authority, and that all relevant ward councillors and the local MP are able to represent residents' concerns through membership of the board, ensuring local voices are heard throughout the programme. I think that's a reasonable recommendation. It's up to Cabinet to consider that in due course. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Eyre. All those in favour of that recommendation? Okay, anyone against? Okay, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then. Okay, performance. So item 15, which is Q3 performance monitoring 25-26. Heather.
Good evening. So this report provides a summary of Q3 performance, covering council delivery plan objectives, performance measures, priority projects and strategic risks for the period between October and December of last year. There are lots of positives in this report, and I would encourage people to have a look at Appendix 1, which does contain all of the detailed information that underpins the covering report. But we have identified some highlights, which are shown at paragraph 4.4, against all of the different council plan themes. And these include improvements such as part of our commitment to being inclusive, we have made improvements to the number of customers on statutory waiting lists for Care Act assessment, reviews, and also deprivation of liberty standards. We've improved our processing of education healthcare plans. And we're also seeing a continued safe reduction in numbers of children on child protection plans. From a green point of view, there's been, again, really good progress on our City, Our River programme, as we can see outside the Council House. And this is designed to bolster our flood defences for the city. So demolition of Peat House and Compton House is progressing well, and there are major works, as we can see, on Derby Riverside. From a growth perspective, we've seen the next stage around Castleward Urban Village redevelopment moving forward, with a planning application submitted for Phase 5, which will see 167 new homes built around Canal Street and New Street, with 30% of those being listed as affordable homes. This obviously builds on considerable progress that we've seen in previous stages. From a vibrancy point of view, before Christmas, we saw another successful Festive Derby programme. And also we saw the completion of the Eastern Gateway, which was delivered by our partner Derbian, but of course was part funded by the council. From a connected council point of view, we've seen, and as reported earlier in this meeting, continued improvement in the council's financial position. And we've seen reduced risk in terms of financial resilience, and alongside that, we have also progressed plans for local government reorganisation. The report highlights the scores on the doors from a performance point of view. So in terms of performance measures, we have 71% have achieved their target, which is an improvement both on Q2 this year, which was 65%, and also Q3 last year. We obviously have highlighted all of those in Appendix 1. There are no areas identified for performance review based on what we're seeing at Q3. However, we have highlighted a couple of areas of focus, which I think we have touched on in previous quarters. But first of all, households with dependent children in temporary accommodation for longer than 6 months. We are continuing to see pressure in this area, and we are taking action in terms of a full-time dedicated caseworker to work with families to secure housing wherever possible, and we still recognise that levels are higher than we would want to see. In terms of reports of antisocial behaviour, we have undertaken a lot of awareness raising over the last few months, as well as focusing our public protection officers to provide a good presence in the city centre. But again, we appreciate that we are working hard with partners to be able to provide reassurance in the city. In terms of delivery plan objectives, 94% of our objectives are completed or on track. We've seen 2 objectives completed within the quarter in terms of delivering a joint strategic needs assessment for our children and young people, and also developing our approach for the Cultural Recovery Fund. From a priority projects point of view, we have 88% on track. Again, key changes to priority projects are highlighted at paragraph 4.8, as we do the same with strategic risks, where we haven't seen any new escalations, but all changes are shown at paragraph 4.9. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple from me. I do appreciate time is getting on, so I'll try and be brief. CP088FA, which is the average working days per employee, could just that for me is encompassed in employee well-being, etc. But with the personnel committee not meeting, I suppose the wrong phrase is wound up, but it doesn't necessarily have a functioning role at the moment. Where does that land in terms of ONS? Just out of interest, because I don't think I'm on any of those bodies that deal with that. Could I ask who's dealing with that in terms of scrutiny?
So the Corporate Services and Cost of Living Scrutiny Board is actually due to receive an update in March on sickness absence. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And secondly, SR39_CP19, which is the inadequate accommodation sufficiency. It mentions the risk is being managed through actions across a number of areas. Now, obviously, maybe offline send me some information, but if there is just some examples of what those actions are from an officer potentially.
Apologies, which performance measure is that?
So that's inadequate accommodation sufficiency to meet the need for statutory housing duties in the city. And it says the risk is being managed through actions across a number of areas, but doesn't specify what those areas are.
I was going to say, unless officers particularly want to highlight.
I'm absolutely happy to have that offline. It doesn't necessarily have to. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I think that's the non-decent home. So there's a housing standard, and we have some old prefab bungalows that we are currently working through the options, and they're the properties that I guess don't meet that decent home standard. So it's all around that one estate, and there is some work in motion to address that estate, but the rest of the council properties are meeting the decent home standard. But I can talk to you offline, Chair.
That'd be great, thank you. That's explained it to a degree. Do we have any questions, queries, comments? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to I think the final item, which is contract and financial procedure matters, item 16, compliance with contract and financial procedure rules. Who is dealing with this one?
Okay. Thanks, Chair. So this report is part of the compliance with the contract and financial procedure rules, and the purpose is to update the council chamber on the procurement and award of a contract to an external service provider for the provision of agency HGV technicians to carry out routine and reactive maintenance and repair the Derby City Council's fleet. To note that the Contract Procedure Rule 56.4 permits the Director of Communities to approve and award a contract in cases of emergency. There is also a requirement to retrospectively report matters to Cabinet as per the contract rules. The recommendation for this one is to note the report and the award of a contract via a waiver. And then just some context for it. So due to the unforeseen loss of Council's agency HGV technicians, which were covering vacant posts, there was a need to immediate provision of an additional agency. So the corporate umbrella agency was unable to supply us with HGV technicians, so we have found services within another agency, and this contract is awarding that to them to onboard those workers to help maintain the council's fleet. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just ask, it's probably a silly question again, but moving forward, are we looking in-house, or is it unrealistic to have that expectation?
We're currently working on it at the minute. So I don't want to jinx us, but things are looking better than what they were. So we're continuing to try and onboard people, and our preference wherever possible is to try and keep it in-house.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr.
As part of that keeping things in-house, are we looking to have an apprenticeship or a trainee or something like that so that going forward we've got our own supply stream of skilled people?
Yes, we are. So part of the work that we're doing at the moment is we've created another role that sits underneath the HGV technician, so we can bring people in and start training them to the higher level to work on the HGVs. Once we have got a full complement of staff, we'll be looking to try and bring an apprentice into the service as well. But at the moment, we've got to get the staff in there so they can support that apprentice and help bring them on. Thank you.
Any more questions, queries, contributions? Okay, I believe that's the end of the item. Can I just say, sorry, Councillor Kerr. Okay, I do apologise if that's the case. Can you give me a clue? Don't think that's the case. Just give you 2 seconds. Just we've covered all the items. Okay. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if I had missed it. To be fair. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Can I just say thank you all for your positive and respectful contributions. It's how exec scrutiny should present these agendas. Thank you for your time and have a good evening for what's left of it. Thank you.